Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include Diablo 4 teasing Season 3, Last Epoch trying to revolutionize trading in ARPGs, Bobby Kotick being accused of discriminating against old white guys, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now before I move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Incogni. You ever wonder how you get spam calls, texts, and emails? It's because thousands of companies are collecting, aggregating, and trading your personal data, and it's all legal. However, you have the right to demand that a data broker deletes whatever personal info they have about you. The thing is, to do that all yourself, to track them down, contact all these companies, and make that request, it would just take way too much time. And that's where Incogni comes in. It's a service that does all of that for you. It reaches out to the data brokers on your behalf. It knows who to contact. It requests that your data be removed, and it deals with any pushback they inevitably give. And you'd be surprised at how much of your personal info may be out there. Not just your full name, email, and phone number, but also things like your employment history, your home address, your relatives, maybe even your social security number. So here's my dashboard. You can see I've got 15 requests in progress and 40 have been completed. I've been using Incogni for about a year now, after I'd started getting a lot of spam texts, and I don't know what caused it. I don't know if it's because I signed up for some store's loyalty card or because of a big data breach. I know LinkedIn has repeatedly had data of hundreds of millions of its users scraped and sold on the dark web. For anyone who does a lot of online shopping, that's a ton of opportunity for your info to get out there and spread around. But I know now, after using Incogni, now that I think back on how frustrating that situation had gotten for me about a year ago, I realized I don't even get spam messages anymore at all. So take back your data, stop the spam, go to incogni.com/Rhykker and use code Rhykker to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker or click the link in the description below and take your personal data off the market. Kicking things off with some Diablo 4 news, in our first story, Blizzard released a video about the looming threat of Path of Exile 2. I mean, they had to know that every ARPG diehard would draw parallels to Grinding Gear Games' logo intro. Seriously though, it's a teaser for Diablo 4's third season, and in it, we see gears, we hear a clock ticking. There's curiously no sound of the gears turning, it's just focusing on the clock. We see chains, so I'm guessing there's some kind of clockwork mechanism that is going to get unleashed upon the world. Season 1, we had the malignancy unleashed upon the world. Season 2, we had vampires unleashed upon the world. Season 3, clockwork things. We have confirmation that the season will begin on January 23rd. This is once again on a Tuesday. It's the same day that Season 2 ends. And how do you folks feel about the Tuesday starts? So it's kind of in the middle of the day as well. It's not in the evening, so it starts in the day. It is across all regions simultaneously, but contrast this to Diablo 3. Season starts in different regions in the evening, so people can get home from work, or maybe call off work early, and then have the whole weekend to just play the start of the season. And now you can't quite do that with D4 unless like you're a streamer or you're gonna take vacation days just for the season start. This is better for the employees because then they don't have to work weekends or overtime to ensure everything goes smoothly with the launch. What you don't want is you launch a season, Friday night, and then no one's there to fix any sudden issues that come up. And given we have no PTR test server for Diablo 4, the odds of an issue arising early they're there. But the question I turn to you folks isn't so much would you prefer Fridays, because I imagine most people would. It'd sound off if you actually prefer Tuesdays, but more so how much would you rather Fridays? Like, does it actually bother you? Are you someone that did used to love to, set up your 3-day weekend of just blasting the start of a season, and now that it starts on a Tuesday in the middle of the workday, you can't be there to try to race to level 100 faster than your buddies? Yeah, but let's hear how much the player base actually cares about this. Oh, no one cares about D4 anymore. Then we found out that we're going to get a dev live stream on January 18th. That's going to be next Thursday. It's going to detail the new season, gameplay features, quality of life updates. But additionally, on January 16th, next Tuesday, we're going to get some more info as well. So what I'm expecting there is the trailer for Season 3. Also revealed this week was that ray tracing will be coming to Diablo 4 in March. And I gotta admit, the demo that was put together by NVIDIA isn't the best showcase of the ray tracing, but I know people kept asking every so often, when will ray tracing actually come to D4? Then lastly, in some Diablo 3 news, Season 30 kicked off yesterday night. I got my tier list video up earlier in the week, so if you do want to play, this is the swan song for Diablo 3. Last season, 29, that was the last season of a new season theme. We are getting a repeat now with Season 30, but we are also getting a massive balance patch that I think is putting D3 into its finalized state, and the tier list really reflects that, how good of a state of balance the game now is in. They also brought back Visions of Enmity from last season. They brought back the Altar of Rights, and those are 2 permanent additions for all seasons going forward, and they're great additions. And then the season theme that's returning is the Soul Shards from Season 25. Alright, moving on to other Activision Blizzard news. We're probably done with Bobby Kotick, but maybe as a final story about him. A former Activision Blizzard exec has come out and is suing Activision Blizzard, and he's basically alleging that he was discriminated against for being an old white guy. James Reed Venable, 57 years old, has filed an age discrimination lawsuit against Activision Blizzard, and he's claiming that Bobby Kotick allegedly said that the company was trying to get rid of, quote, old white guys. He was with Activision from 2014 until 2023, working in the Central Tech Department, and was the Senior Director of Business Operations at the time of his firing. He claims that younger, less experienced employees were promoted over him, alleges a hostile work environment, and that he tried to file a complaint to HR when a female employee allegedly commented on his, quote, white male privilege. So, not the story that I was expecting to hear, given the past that we've heard of Activision Blizzard under Bobby's leadership, and the boys club and the frat club and the Cosby suite and all that. But it just goes to show Bobby Kotick doesn't discriminate. No, he doesn't see color, race, creed, gender. No, he hates us all equally. I kid, of course. He doesn't hate us. He's not capable of emotion. Then in some last Epoch news, the devs unveiled the details of the trade system being implemented into the game. I got a full video going over the details, giving my thoughts right here, but it's really interesting and innovative. It's the most innovative trade system that I've seen, and it might be fair to say it's the most innovative trade system in any game ever. I know that's a big claim, and I haven't played every game ever, but you should check out the full details. For a brief overview that really just gives a fraction of how deep the system is, you join one of 2 guilds. If you join the trade guild, you can trade, and if you join the non-trade guild, then you get better drop rates and ability to tailor your drops. And both players can play together. People keep saying that other games do this, but other games tend to separate out these players. Like if you're solo self-found, you cannot play with other players. With this solution, you can still play. We're not being separated out into different playgrounds. Rather than find a compromise, they're finding a way to make both trade and non-trade minded players happy. Again, Last Epoch is launching on February 21st, and the devs have also announced that they're going to get some Twitch drops, meaning you can watch drops-enabled Twitch streamers to earn some free in-game cosmetics. There'll be 4 total cosmetics that can be earned, and it'll be starting on February 22nd, Thursday, the day after launch. And for 4 days, if you watch at least 1 hour each day on drops-enabled streams, you'll get all 4 rewards. Then if you miss any of the 4, starting the next week, February 29th, they'll repeat the same thing so that if you missed one, you can still get it. In other news, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League may be in trouble. Various news outlets and even influencers have posted their first hands-on impressions of the game, and they have been quite negative. In fact, I haven't seen such negative pre-release coverage of a AAA game in a long time. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is an upcoming action shooter game being developed by Rocksteady, which was a great studio. They're known for the Batman Arkham series. Warner Bros. Bought them in 2010, and their last mainline game was 2015, so about a decade later now, they're launching another AAA, and if this flops the way all the comments seem to be suggesting it's gonna, this could be a end of studio event. That's just the position that AAA development is in these days. If it takes you 5 to 10 years to make one game, the millions of dollars that go into that, and then that game does not make back its investment, this is how we see studios go under. Which is a damn shame, to clarify. I'm not advocating for this. But this is also why studios don't want to take big risks on big AAA titles. Well, we keep getting the same kinds of games or very safe games, and we end up with just a lot of mediocre AAA, or quadruple A is what we should call them now, titles, given how astronomical the budgets have gotten. Back in the day, it used to be you released a flop, no big deal, 2 years later you release another game. Nowadays, a AAA releases a flop, your studio's bankrupt. Now there is some hope, because following this, perhaps a little too coincidentally, the devs lifted the portion of the NDA that closed alpha test players had that prevented them from sharing their experiences. And since they did that, a lot of alpha test players have come out and expressed countering opinions to the narrative of the game being absolutely terrible. A lot of people have come out and said that they actually enjoyed the game, that it's not that bad. I've seen the story praised in particular. But that said, there also were more negative comments. And it altogether does paint a picture of a game that is mediocre, decent at best, has some good elements like the campaign, but can get dull and boring once you veer off course from that. Now, flop or not, I do hope that Rocksteady doesn't shut down. Because speaking of people losing their jobs, in our next story, Unity, it never ends with these guys. Unity has announced another round of layoffs, and this time about 25% of their total workforce is getting laid off, 1,800 jobs. Now we've been seeing layoff after layoff at Unity. Just in November, they lost 200 to 300 people. John Riccitello, the CEO, stepped down through there was a whole other debacle there, which we've been talking about Unity now for at least a year or two. But that whole debacle where Unity, being the game engine of preference for many indie devs, they were changing their pricing model to, we're not going to rehash it, screw over their customer base, and in droves, their customers were looking for other alternatives, and that led to the CEO having to step down. But it's just been one bad headline after another for Unity for at least a year, if not two now. Now that said, I will say, in fairness, the 25% layoffs is not necessarily indicative of a catastrophic wave of layoffs that are leading towards a complete closure of the company. I don't think that's going to happen. Unity actually exploded in size over the past few years. They hired a lot of people, and particularly in the tech sector and the video game industry, we've seen over the course of COVID, lots of hiring happening. And COVID was a bubble, and now it's burst, and now they can't afford all this staff, so we're seeing a lot of layoffs across the industry in general. But at the end of the day, who are the people that get screwed the most? The employees being laid off. Then it's some Baldur's Gate 3 news. In an interview with Game Reactor, senior designer at Larian Studios Anna Gooksons acknowledged that Act 3 of the game, without spoilers, may not have been liked as much by some players. She acknowledged that Act 3 had a mixed reception from players. And she said she understands why some might not like the third act. She talks about how each act had its own distinct flavor, and that the transition from 2 to 3 has a big tonal shift that might have been not appreciated by some players. She acknowledged that some players might actually prefer the tone of Act 3, whereas others prefer the tone of Act 2, and that moving forward, the studio should be a bit more mindful in handling tone shifts in their games to make for less drastic transitions. Now again, without going into specific spoilers, if you've played Baldur's Gate 3, what are your thoughts? Did you like Act 3? Did you prefer Act 2? Sound off in the comments with your thoughts. Then lastly, in some Prince of Persia news, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is releasing on January 18th, and reviews have been coming out, and it is getting very good reviews. As of now, 94% of critics are recommending the game, and it has an 87 average critic score on OpenCritic. Now this title is being made by Ubisoft Montpellier, which is the Ubisoft studio behind Rayman 1, 2, and 3, Origins, Legends, Beyond Good and Evil, Rabbids Go Home, and Valiant Heart. So say what you will about Ubisoft as a whole, but this studio within Ubisoft has put out bangers. They got robust experience in making platformers, and The Lost Crown is a return to a 2.5D side-scrolling action-adventure. It seems to have the feel very much of an old nostalgic Prince of Persia game. This is the first new major installment in the series since 2010's Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands, and it was only made in about 3.5 years. We were talking before about AAA budgets and 5+ years of development. What we see here is a smaller game. It's more like a AA budget. And the game director, Munir Radi, in interviews has said that they were not assigned this project. He basically put together a team and pitched the idea, and they got the okay. Now, this is not a massive title, but it does contain a solid 20 to 25 hours of gameplay. This is for a well-explored playthrough, with the reviewers feeling that the pacing was just right, that there's just enough content and gameplay in there. Prince of Persia has had quite the journey. I remember back watching my dad play the little side-scrolling game where you jump through the traps and get cut in half and fight the weird skeleton guy with a sword, and what it became over the years, all the way to getting a big Hollywood movie and everything. Say what you want about the movie, I liked it. It's a guilty pleasure movie of mine. But it seems a little similar to Grand Theft Auto in the sense that it's a game that started off as something very simple, kind of 2D-ish, and then over the course of entries becomes something more and bigger and more narrative. I mean, I would have never thought that Grand Theft Auto would have become this big, like, story-driven game, when all I used to do was basically steal cars and run over people. But how about you folks? You got any interest in the Prince of Persia franchise? Did you used to play the game? Did you fall off at some point? Do you feel that the devs let you down at some point? Are you willing to come back? Sound off in the comments, because that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we ragged on Bobby Kotick some more. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more gaming content.